Stay in your lane, Tommy.
All
Stay in
right.
your lane.
That was for you.
I think we have the sound issue fixed. Apparently, my computer updated some stuff and changed some things back to defaults. All right. Let's retry the intros for those that are there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Explicit Measures with Tommy, Seth, and Mike with audio this time. It wasn't just just mum is the word before, so we got audio now.
The ironic thing about the intro was right before we went live, I didn't have
Any sound either.
any sound. So I'm like waving down, and that's what the whole first part of this was like. Me describing that no, I didn't have any mic coming through, and it's funny that we had no sound at all coming through.
Well, I guess everyone's computer was doing the same updates.
To appease Tommy, I'll intro with my Happy Tuesday in the first minute.
Gotta have it.
To waiting.
That was one of your better ones.
Welcome everybody to the show. We're all over the place, obviously.
Oh boy. So I was just reminiscing of my Monday, how long it's been. It felt like a long day, even though it's been one day only. I felt like I had a long day on Monday. Lots of Dax writing and statements and things. Although I feel like it was a pretty cool Dax statement that we came up with. Ultimately, at the end, solved some really interesting problems. I do find it's interesting, especially around Dax. There's a lot of times you're like, I don't understand what it's doing. And you push and you push and you learn and you work and you push and you figure and you go read a whole bunch of blogs from SQL BI. And at the end, you're like, huh, I think I understand it now. And so I feel like I had like an epiphany kind of yesterday around being able to more in an advanced way manipulate a filter context and then apply that filter context into a measure or statement. So anyways, it was kind of fun.
It's one of those where you do it, you're like, oh my gosh, I have 5 other reports I can use this.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, and it was just that moment of like, there's like this, the top of the hill kind of feeling, right? You're working hard, you can't quite see the top of the hill, and then all of a sudden you crest it and you're like, okay, I think I get it. And then it works and you're like, I figured it out. It was one of those moments where I was really excited about all the time and effort I put in, but there wasn't a soul in the world who cared what I did. Because at the end of the day, the report is going to be like, yeah, great, looks good. All right, move on. Like it's like nothing. I'm like, but this is so cool. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, we understand your sympathy, but Greg says he has no idea what you're talking about.
So underappreciated.
Exactly right.
Right. It's I had one of those moments in a not Dax realm yet this weekend where somebody was requesting something to be added to the report, and we're like, oh man, like that's gonna change a lot. Like that's a big problem. And they're just sitting there going, I don't understand why it's a big problem. Like all I want you to do is add this new thing into the report. We're like, because it changes the grain and like blows up the models. And we're like, okay. So it's like, but that's with DAX all the time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Since you guys are doing it this way, can you make it, give me this calculation?
Yeah, that is a totally different animal.
You're talking through your two. We'll see what we can do. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, dude, what do you mean? You just did that the other day.
Yeah, it's so simple,
minutes.
right? Yeah.
You're like, yeah.
not like changing the visual type. It's a little bit more fundamental than that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Challenge.
Challenge.
Excellent.
So funny story from the weekend. Mike, you will appreciate this.
Does it involve cannolis? That's what I need to know, though.
Kind indirectly.
Oh, I knew it was.
Well, it has to do with my mother, and so yes. I called her over the weekend. I said I was talking to Mike, and she's like, oh, from the podcast. I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, Mike DiCarlo, right? I'm like,
oh
Mike
yeah,
DiCarlo?
Yeah, Mike the Carlo. Mm-hmm.
No, DiCarlo.
Oh, DiCarlo.
I
said the Carlo.
And I literally went, who's Mike DiCarlo? She's like, Mike DiCarlo from the podcast. My mother's so Italian, she Italianizes Italian names.
I love it.
So now the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy Puglia, Mike DiCarlo, and Seth Baratino.
I was wondering where you're going to go with my name.
Yes.
Like, Baratino.
I did take the Sunday yet to think about a good one, but yeah. And I had no idea what she was talking about.
I like it. That's good.
Like Carlo wasn't Italian enough, but yes. So more Power BI Italians out there.
I enjoy it. Seth is our tribute Irish Italian. Love it. Amazing. That's actually a really good one. That's funny. So next on Thursday, I'll have to make sure I remember to introduce myself as Mike DiCarlo.
Yes.
That's amazing.
The Carlo consultant.
Every
That
family
doesn't
member
work.
that I have heard who has listened to the podcast, I get a much different reaction, Tommy, than what you're saying. Because you're like, your mom like listens to it, she knows my name. My family has listened to the podcast, like, we don't have a clue what you're talking about. We're like, you're really excited about stuff, but we don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah. Again, I have my mother's told me the past, like, you could be a clown, I'll be proud of you. I'm like, okay, thanks. Yes. Anyways, there's a whole
Hmm.
Italian mothers out there.
Maybe it's closer than you think. You know, you're a data clown now.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
Oh man.
All right. Well, let's talk through some of the topic today. Jumping into our topic for today, we're kind of talking about maybe it'll probably cross over into Power BI, but this might be a larger of a topic in general. Let's just talk about storytelling data or storytelling in Power BI. Tommy, I think this topic kind of came around from you. Like, maybe give us a little bit more of a rounded perspective here of what do you mean by this topic, and we're going to kind of maybe touch on today.
So yeah, the inspiration from this, we've had this conversation in the past, and there's a book out there called Storytelling with Data. I don't have the author in front of me, but I'll get the link.
Hmm?
And as I was going through the points in there, I was questioning how much does that apply to what we do in Power BI. And allow me to explain. So I'll say I'm going to read just a pair of two sentences from the book. And for those listening, think about how much are you doing that really in every report. So a data story must have a central insight or idea. It must have a main point. While you can certainly share different facts, they should all support the overreaching insight. By focusing on a main point, you ensure the data story has a clear purpose. And all the data storytelling talks about a main insight, right? It's supposed to describe one particular, inspiration or enlightenment. But a lot of times, if you really did just transfer that over completely to Power BI, and in the reports that we build, they're not a place in time. We're building this report for the department, for them almost to do their own storytelling. We're providing the tools and the resources to do so, but we're not building this ad hoc report. Like someone said, should we be spending money in this campaign? And then just building a report just to explain that one thing. So everyone, it's the buzzword in our industry.
Hmm?
On if you go on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, look at storytelling in Power BI.
Yeah.
I would
But
say that a lot. There's a lot of
right,
those showing up.
right. But again, really, how applicable is that to really what we're supposed to do? I think that's the two questions I'll pose is how much of that are we really supposed to do? And really, is it okay if we don't, so to speak?
I I I like where this is gonna go. So let me just kind of iterate on one area here. I think there is a lot of links on social media. Anything I see on like LinkedIn, there's a lot of like different storytelling things. I definitely think there are different reports for different roles, and I think this is kind of um, are we talking about? Do I know the answer that I'm looking for, or is this more of an exploratory kind of report? Now, there's probably more areas that you could kind of deviate and push reports into. But I think that, where I see the storytelling with data, I'll speak from, I guess, partly of my experience here. Things that I like to see from storytelling with data stuff, it's the kind of the infographic level stuff. There's I just saw one by Carrie Bolosco. Not sure how to say her last name, but she's also on a Microsoft MVP. But she made an amazing charticulator visual and about like this, space launches or launching rocket ships into space. Amazing, looked really, really good. And I would say there was a story with that information. There was some kind of story that she was conveying with the different countries and how they were, um, what's their space program look like. So for me, that was like storytelling. But I think there's also another side of this where I'm looking at this going, I just need to put data down on a piece of page. I need access to the data. I think there's actually another side of this that's also doesn't always need to tell a story. However, what I will say is I think it's more important that you have insights, or maybe even maybe it's not a story, but maybe it's like little chapters, right? These sets of visuals are trying to describe what action should I take out of seeing this page or these groups of visuals, what I wanted to do with the data. And maybe that's like a smaller story, not quite as big as like thinking like the whole report is one big story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
guys
gonna
think?
jump in here and like I agree. Like it's to me it's a buzzword. Like it's a and it's confusing, right? And that's why I say it's a buzzword because people are using it in different ways and they're
Mm.
taking different parts of, you know, reporting insights, what you're trying to convey in a report, and they're mashing them all together,
Yes.
right? Like with
Yeah.
and that's why it's confusing, I think, to me at least. Maybe others have a very clear, but as I'm trying to like break apart like what is storytelling versus just information or data, right? Like I can probably draw those parallels between you need data, here's a paginated report or a SQL query,
Mhm.
right? Go get it whenever you need it. And then I'm reading something like an infographic or a journalism, right? Like an article that is reinforcing the opinion piece or whatever with data, with a
Mhm.
visual that's supporting an argument or supporting this the telling of a story, right? And that's where it's like it really disconnected because to me, like how do we put together the pieces of like what are we doing on a normal basis, right? So one of the first questions I had like kind of to bring to the table, which we seem to already have addressed this buzzword thing, is like what does storytelling mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
What is storytelling to you guys in the context of like Power BI, right? If I'm going to generate a report for somebody, what are the components that if I'm going to tell a story with my report that I have to put together, or like what can I do differently, I guess, in that context, that would put it into the buzzword category. Maybe that's the right question. Maybe it's
What
not.
puts
It'll
it
be
into the
interesting to see where
buzzword
this go.
category?
Yeah. Like
I
how do you what is storytelling in data mean? Like are you going through all of the steps to actually build a report that has one way of telling the story, or is it like a pick your own adventure?
And I think that's a great point though, because the true essence of like storytelling, there was already a predisposed outcome, right? And then you're just building the visuals to support that outcome based on the findings, not that pick your own story or pick your own adventures, so to speak. I am the same with you, Seth, and Mike too, where I'm kind of frustrated when people are just like, you need to do storytelling with data. That's what Power BI is. Like, no. And a lot of times we err away from that specific purpose where we've looked at the data beforehand, and we've talked about this in the past where we used to do more of this before Power BI was out, where you looked at the data, you did your exploratory analysis, you found basically what that insider answer was, and then you built basically everything around what you found.
Mhm.
Most times now, even if you're doing a KPI report or like targeted report operational, it's to display, and monitor, but it's not really, hey, I found this. Here's all the things that support this. Here's what you should do with this. But it's a already set path. So to answer your question, I think what puts it in the buzzword is when people just put a lot of pretty, honestly, to be frank, when there's a lot of pretty visuals out there that looks really cool and you can click on this and they think that's the story.
I think
That's what I would consider the buzz side of it.
yeah, I may say like I think the story side of things is a bit distracting to what we're trying to do with reports in general. I think I understand the story, but I think if you look at a story, you think like there's this overarching theme to what's going on inside this report, and I think that's not necessarily always true for all reports. If I broke that down and just said, there are, I'm trying to think of another analogy here that would be a lot of a good analysis here, but I'm not really drawing to it. I'm thinking maybe more of my reports fit more like an outline form, right? There's a couple key things that I want you to do. So in the concept of a story, right, there you are kind of introducing people to a topic, and then in my reports, or at least how I try and design reports, I do try to put like higher level summarized pieces of data, KPI cards, total numbers at the top of the report. And then as I work my way to the, left to right, top to bottom, as I go through the report, even on a page, I'm trying to add more details. The reason being is I'm typically not adding a massive table at the very top of the report page and adding all the details on those tables, because that's too specific. I haven't walked you through quote unquote the story to get you down to the information you need. Um, maybe another way of saying this is When I think about my Power BI data models, I think of them as one large table. Think about it as every, again, it's a data model, it's a star schema, whatever it is, but essentially you can kind of drag and drop any columns together. And when I describe this to customers, I would say, this is a massive table of information. I don't need to know all of the data in that table to make some sort of decision, right? You're looking for the outliers, the records that are missing, the records that are lower than they should be, or expectations. So I feel like a lot of time what I'm doing is I'm trying to ask these questions about where are the missing, what is the actionable pieces of data, and that's kind of where I would put a lot of my effort. Maybe you can make the analogy of taking action and walking people to that action of what they should be taking. But again, I think I don't really love the storytelling verbiage that we're hearing there a lot on social media.
Right. And I feel, does that answer the question, Seth, or did we kind of get to the
Yeah,
question?
I
Okay.
think
I'm pretty sure I
think
rambled just a long time on that one.
like to me, at this point in time, like storytelling in Power BI is, and we're done after this because this is the definition. Like I want to dive into the other parts of it, right? Storytelling is very focused. It's a very focused type of reporting, right? Because even what
Yes.
we're talking about is and some of the things in the chat, like I'm going to present something, right? So if you're presenting and you want the flow of establishing, the context, you're stating the problem, you're exploring the different ways in which you pursued the problem, and then you arrived at a resolution, and you're showing that like kind of step by step through a story of visualization and reporting. That's very effective. It's a very effective way to communicate, but it's super narrowly focused, like, and outside of a presentation, right? Like there are, I would argue, very few cases where you're actually building a report that already has that narrative like outlined, and realistically people are only reviewing it because the data is going to change, but the outcome doesn't.
Right. And I think those are two main things that go as part of what you're saying, that I completely agree. Usually, well, I worry about people who start only in Power BI from their visual and their data career, because I think for all of us, like I started with doing any data that was presented, started with PowerPoint. Like I would take something in Excel, build a chart, because it was always with the specific purpose in mind. So I had to do the exploratory side, and I was trying to say, like, should we be spending more in these campaigns? What's working well with leads? And those were the questions posed, and it was a specific time over the last 6 months, not the next 6 months. So, and then it was a set day that had to be presented, and then it was the findings of that. That was
You're speaking right to like what I was talking about earlier, was like
right.
there's this single action thing that I'm trying to drive
Right.
for. So like there's again, I don't really love a story because I feel like a story is just kind of like I'm here, I'm absorbing, and I'm not really getting like, oh cool, interesting story. I don't feel like it, to me it drives action the way I feel like what you just described there, Tommy. Like you're asking very specific questions, and I think you illustrated my point really well around, we think of all of our data as a big pool of data,
Right.
and it's just a bunch of numbers at that point, right? And now what you're saying is, okay, which of my campaigns were the most successful? I want to do that again. Which ones were the least successful? Do I change them or do I stop doing them? So you're asking, like, to me, this questions and action area, I think, is much more appropriate for report building. And maybe us question could be considered a story. Like, how do you get someone to that one question answer, right? Kind of thing. But I feel like my reports are way larger than just one question anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Well, but I think therein lies the role that we play. So
Yes.
my role, and again, I think it's a different skill too than how we build a report in Power BI, or I'll challenge that at least. Where my role as analysis analyst back in the day was to help answer those types of questions. It was those one-off things. It wasn't to build a dashboard or a report. Part of that was that, but it was very much in that specific, explore the data. We're trying to answer this. Should we do X, Y, and Z over, for this is what campaigns we're going to be running, et cetera, et cetera. But to your point, and like, I do agree with you. We are not doing that now. I know I've said this in the past, but I don't want to say I worry about that, but I question why people don't. I don't know about you guys, but that question's not asked of BI analysts anymore. To, hey, we're trying to figure out, should we do these products? Should we be doing this type of campaign? Help us answer that question. And it's more just give me the data, show me the trending so I can click on it. We're not almost. It's easier for us not to necessarily be a leader or, in a sense, someone where we can help answer questions, right? We're just more of a service, less than someone who can actually help change
See,
or direct.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't. That's the part I don't agree with. Like
Okay.
it really annoys me because I know that in one of our recent podcasts, we were reading an article where this thought struck me, and it now has stuck with me, right? Because when I used to talk about what we do, it's like, oh, bringing data to people, like giving access to data, and it's not what we do, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I think that main idea was what we're doing is we're bringing insights to people, right? And that's what, when you go through the questions of understanding somebody's job and what are the questions that they have on a regular basis that they're constantly looking for in data, that we are grouping, aggregating, like making those insightful, like bringing the insights forward out of the data so they don't have to go rip through and do everything
Right.
themselves. So to me, like this is where, when I think about storytelling, like the chapters of storytelling would be the insights that somebody gleans. Now, if I'm going to carry that all the way through, I would say, like, I would argue that the vast majority of our reports that we're building are trying to give users the insights that they need to construct the stories, because we don't know what those are all the time,
Correct.
Yeah.
right? So that's why we go through this like litany of, like, tell me how you do your job. Like, what is the purpose of this
Mhm.
report? Because I can't give you every insight in all areas of your business,
Correct.
right? So we
Yes.
need to limit the scope, and that's the scoping conversation, to just narrow in on like what's behind this door, right? When you're dealing with your 500 doors in a day, you have your top 5. Let's open that door, and like, what are the things in here that if you had presented to you, instead of you having to go like dig through data to figure out what that would look like, here's the answer. What does this help you do, right? Because you still have individuals in the business that take what these insights are holding and be like, whoa, something changed, right? Like, they have to then go construct the story for somebody else, because our reports aren't going to do that, right? It would take them building a report to go like build the storytelling version of the report, where you're piecing together parts of these insights to tell somebody what's going on in the business. And that's where I'm like I would personally like a different vocab, I guess, around what it is we're trying to do here, because you're not doing the full-fledged like end to end in your reports for every report. And I would almost argue like you're doing it like 5% of the time, at least in my experience.
So
I would agree
a
with
lot.
that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think I just threw out 2 links to 2 reports kind of in the chat window here around. There was actually some great examples, I think, of what storytelling with data is doing. And I think this kind of centers around, Seth, what you were talking about. There's like this, here is 4 or 5 insights I want you to glean from this data. I've already created the story. I've decided the insights. I've looked at the information, and these are what are coming out of this. So the opioid crisis in the Gartner 2018 report was something that Microsoft put on with a number of other visualization tools, and they came out with a good report. It helped them be able to. It was a good example of what a good report looked like. It had a lot of data modeling, kind of just trying to show off most of what Power BI could do. Again, they did another really interesting report in 2022 around the UN Sustainable Development Goals and what that looked like. So, and then even still, if you look at the blog post itself, it even talks about, at the very bottom, but without even seeing the report, here are some key insights we found. Right, boom, 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 and there's a story that you're trying to take people from I know nothing about the UN sustainability data set to, oh, I can see, access to electricity has improved in the last 20 years. And, how many more people were able to have electricity based on this improvement of infrastructure over time. I think that's good storytelling. You've created a report that supports these key insights that are helping people see a topic of something that they're interested in. To me, that feels like storytelling.
And yeah, and you're getting on something that I wanted to ask you two, because the two intelligent people, the two smart people in the room, because I may not be smart, but I am dumb. So, but let me
Whatever,
tell
Tommy, you're smart too.
listen, you guys are. I don't allow me to say a statement, and I want to see if you agree or not with it. Because as we're talking about this balance of what we're supposed to do with our Power BI reports, and then what our role is. If someone were to be developing reports, like they're the Power BI developer, and they don't take any proactive um work on their reports to do storytelling, they will be foreseen as just a data dump, or like just service only, and not someone that the business can go to for insights, without the person being proactive and self-conscious on doing themselves for the business. Do you that might be a little convoluted, but that's the statement I want to say, because I am in the opinion that I think we have to be proactive when we're developing a report. It's not, hey, what do you need? What decisions you're making? I'll build a report. Okay, report's done. What's the next report? I think we have to be responsible for, let me develop a report. This is what you're trying to do. And then again, whether you actually have those bullet points in the report, or sending out a PowerPoint, or even like a message to the team, like, based on the report, we found these things. You didn't ask for this, but we found these insights. Do we need to do that?
I don't think I would. I'm not sure, because I think at the time the report released, the insights may change as you get into the report. I think I would do the first part, what you're talking about, Tommy. When you're talking about asking the user what they want to do, and then one of the things, again, as we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, the idea of like this: how much time do you spend on a report versus how much value you get out of the report? Because I don't want to spend a ton of time on a report that I'm getting minimal to no value from. If you're just data dumping information, like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on report pieces. We're not going to add bookmarks. We're not going to do a bunch of fancy things. If you just want data out of it, you want access to data, that's a different kind of story. But when or a different kind of report build, I don't want to use the word story there. On the other hand, though, Tommy, what you're talking about here is, when we're talking about these insights, I think the insights are a bit more generic. And today, right, if you publish the report, if sales are down 30% year over year, fine, that's the insight. And maybe that's a separate communication, but I'm not building the one report just to show that insight, because next year you could look at the same report and it would be different. So I think the idea is, I'm trying to help the end user articulate what their question is. And then as a report author, I'm trying to like reshape that question into something that is graphically showing the answer one way or the other. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So am I being clear there, or is that just too vague?
Yeah, let me rephrase the question
Yeah.
a bit, and I think that would be a little more clarity.
Okay.
So when I was a marketing manager at a marketing firm, bi-weekly we would send to each client their insights. Like, we
Yes.
already had dashboards for them,
Yes.
but we would send them, hey, these campaigns are up, these campaigns are down, this is what performed well. We're noticing this as an outlier, and we
Yep.
would send these kind of bulleted points and a couple of visuals that supported the last 2 weeks of performance, right? Where but again, that's obviously time. So should we be doing more of that, where we have a data model, because we focus so much on the modeling side? We have this great model that has all, we can build and find whatever we need to.
Mhm.
Should we be taking time or budgeting time to proactively building stories with the reports that we already have?
Okay, so in the example that you just gave, I feel like there was too much information on the report to let the users just self-discover this. And you're trying to you're even taking, like, that's one step further, like, hey, Mr., customer or whatever, here's the three key things that we found in all of your, and marketing data, particularly
Right.
around campaign management stuff, can be very intense, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of it, right? So I think particularly people just get overwhelmed with the volume of data. So you're trying to highlight what are the most important things to look at out of all the things you could look at.
Right.
So, on one hand, I totally understand why you're doing that, and I think it definitely, serves the customer well. It helps them focus on what's important. And then you have the report is the supporting information about
Right.
what you just described, right? So I think that makes sense. On the other hand, oh, go ahead, Seth.
No, go finish the thought.
Oh, I was going to say, on the other hand, when I'm looking at that, and I don't want, if your report is so big, there's so much information that I have to tell you where to look. I maybe would argue, is this really the right report for what we're looking for, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to have the report speak for itself to some degree. So maybe it's less visuals on a single page. Maybe it's, a specific question around which of my campaigns did the best, which of my campaigns did the worst, and that's all we're talking about on one page, and trying to put visuals and graphics in a place
Yeah,
that
but
lets people see
I
it.
would argue that's not really a story though. What's performing well, what's performing not. Part of that quick insights that not related to
Mhm.
Microsoft kind of thing. But
Yes.
as the chat saying, part of those quick insights was very much what's the last 2 weeks and the data changes. So,
Yes.
oh my, and it was why is that campaign up? Why is that campaign down? Which can change every 2 weeks.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's what I'm saying. You may have a report that shows you what's doing well or not, but that's not a story. You
But
know
I
that
would argue. Do you think that the insights that you were sending via email were story?
so honestly, I'll two parts of that. Yes, because we would do like supporting visuals to explain it. So we actually part of the retainer
So
was actually for
it was part of the report that they could see what you were driving insights and saying, "Hey, here are the key things we see out of the report that you
right,
have access to, but here's more insight into it."
right, and it was explaining like, hey, this campaign did really well. The reason why these keywords, and we're actually looking at these keywords, so a supporting visual, or and then that also spurred conversation because it wasn't just them looking at the report. It was this is up 30%, and they got an email that said that. And we
Okay.
explained why. So and that spurred the conversation to
So
do more
is
explore
this
yeah,
internal customer or external?
external customers. So we were a digital
Okay.
marketing agency and all
So
the cli yeah,
are you aware of all the initiatives that the customer had going on to
yeah, I
precipitate a
was
change
doing their
up or down?
yeah, so
So it's like the ecosystem of things changing was purely in your company and not in theirs.
we were responsible for like a specific example, we were responsible for keywords, campaigns, AdWords, SEO,
Sure.
social
Okay.
media, and it was all that performance.
Yeah.
So,
But
but we
what
did it.
I'm what
Yeah.
I'm driving at though is I would make an argument that potentially that's not the full story.
Mhm.
Right? You don't know like are they sinking a ton more money into things than they more normally do with the budget? Are they expecting? Do they have some major initiative that they enlisted your company in assistance with to drive whatever customer action? Like the full picture and the full story. If you're only providing, you know, parts of the data or a
Right.
certain thing, you may not have visibility into. So thus, you're driving insights, let alone like your up, down, or reporting that you've generated for them. It's great that you're
I
doing the
see what you're
analysis
saying.
for them, right?
Mhm.
But that's really, in my mind, all you're doing is you're doing the analysis and saying in a report that
Mm.
should already have defined scope, right? And I think that's part of the problem in general is people aren't bucketing aren't building reports to drive from raw data into like finding the insights. That has to be scope driven. Like you're not going to find every
Yeah,
insight from raw data, right? So when we're building reports, I think there's a lot of work that has to go into like us building a useful report to allow somebody to ask multiple questions and
Mhm.
get answers by using the visualizations, the filters, the slicers, etc. But we may not be like outside of the original scoping call. Like that's why I'm saying I think we build more insight driven reports, and that's hard enough. And the consumer is putting together the full story because they're the only ones that either run their business, whether that's a small narrow thing, a larger box, or if you're doing external reporting, you're driving at like providing these insights to people so that they can put those into their full story, which is, hey, we had this major initiative, we enlisted Tommy's company, they're helping us out because they gave us these key insights that fits into
Mhm.
my narrative of when I'm presenting whether or not it was worth our dollars to increase the
right.
marketing spend because we saw a 30% increase,
Yes.
right? And that's where it's like I think that's where to reset. I think there's a ton of where we land the majority of the time is understand, like digging into raw sources of information, cleaning it, shaping it, aggregating it, and providing it a easy button value for people to glean insights in each report page, right? And the more focused you can be, or I should say refined, around using Power BI to let people get to those insights faster, or showing them, right? Because a lot of it's up down, a lot of it's change over time, change since last period, whatever the case may be, that lets them understand their business more and craft their own story, as opposed to us being the ones that are so deeply involved. And maybe this changes where you live, right? In the business intelligence team, you're rarely building storytelling reports. Maybe in the business front end, you are, right? And maybe it is a shift, because it's like you have these reports or the data access to then say, oh, you know what? I have access to this model. The BI team provided me this report that allows me to gain these insights. I'm going to go drive and build a very specific report that um, like rounds it out for everybody, but it's very narrow in focus, I guess, is where I'm leaning.
Yeah, I think I like what you're saying here, Seth, because I feel like the story is too groomed groomed of a report. I think we're trying to produce reports. I think the reports that I'm working on are trying to serve many different functions, as many as I can. Right, again, to maximize my work level with the whatever that reporting is, whatever the client is, or whatever the project we're working on is. I'm trying to maximize my time to be able to cater these very widely used, answer lots of questions kind of report. It's a Swiss Army knife, right? I'm trying to build a Swiss Army knife report, basically, right? And to answer some of those why questions, why things are happening, and then corresponding that why against what should I do, right? So this is the maturity curve that I talk through a lot with companies, where it is this idea of like, are you doing purely historical reporting only? Are you looking only at the things that have happened? Or you're now starting to like project and forecast and look forward and do some more predictive things on the more mature side of that curve. A lot of companies are still just trying to cover their bases in what happened historically, what happened, and not really look about none of the tools. Well, not none. A lot of the tools are not really focusing on what should I be doing, where should I be spending the money at, right? And I think that's, Tommy, where you were going earlier with your marketing campaign, right? Is right. You want to be giving them not only just a historical look at the world, here's what happened, but here's potentially more around what we should be doing. Where should we be spending more money?
Here are the recommendations.
Here's the recommendation. So I think that was the added value that you're bringing as that team, to not only provide people with here's what happened, here's the data that supports it, but here's what we should do to continue the success. Or if we're going to push on this particular campaign, or we're selling this particular product, here's what we recommend doing because this seems to be winning. And honestly, this has been frankly a strategy that we've employed at Power BI Tips on how we put our content out, right? We do a lot more content on LinkedIn than we do like the website that we have now, or through YouTube, because we do YouTube. It's just we like it. It works well for us. But if we look at like the interaction level, like it's LinkedIn for us. So that being said, that's you cater your actions to meet the desired results.
So let me ask a very provocative question, or a very straightforward question. Then, based on the last 10 minutes, shouldn't be then based on everything we're saying, shouldn't the BI team, business intelligence, be responsible for storytelling? Because storytelling is proactive. It's you're the leaders with data. People rely on the story on what they should do. And everything we've talked about, how we're delivering the reports to users, shouldn't we be the ones providing not just insights in a report, but do that storytelling that we're talking about? Is that our domain?
I mean, go ahead, Seth.
No, Mr. IT locked down the organization.
Good answer.
I think, but I think this drives into an area that we've talked about a lot, right? Like, I think it depends on what the level of reporting is, right? Like, I think we may be doing more storytelling type reporting, or refined reporting that gets to that level, when you're um, in that really wide audience or like high level, um, important wide audience kind of reporting, or maybe it's leadership, but at the same time, I could see that, business units have their own leadership reporting as well. I just typically I would say probably not. Like I think it's our that team's job to provide a lot more of the accurate data and insightful reporting and helping people build their own insights and stories within their own business units because they're going to know it better than you do. Because BI teams are all over the place. Like typically where I
Yeah.
work, like you're helping everybody in all areas of the business, right? So if I'm in finance or marketing, the marketing guy is going to know a lot about more about his business because he spends 365 days a year there, and I only spend 10, right?
Hmm.
So him helping me understand what is important to him or her is
Totally.
allows me to like help facilitate their use of data within the organization to quickly get to insights, right? Because that was like the key for me is we don't just want to throw data around, albeit sometimes people just need access to it because they don't
Mhm.
know what they want,
Correct.
right? So the faster we can make to get to those decisions, the faster we can get to narratives and stories to convince people to talk about our business, to make decisions. Like those are all part and parcel of like I think the main motivation behind a BI team within an organization.
I think those are, and I think a lot of times I feel like a lot of communication I'm having with business users is they kind of know what they want, but they don't know how to produce what they want inside a Power BI lens. And I keep talking about this a lot with people is Power BI is a framework. It has walls that you can play within. If you play within those walls, it's very fast, it's very efficient, and it's very quick to build you reports. If you start venturing outside those walls, things get more challenging, right? Hey, I want a thermometer on my report that does this. There is no thermometer visual. There's just not. So that part of the story is going to be more complicated to build into the report. And then it becomes an issue of, do we spend the time building a custom visual that meets that need or not? So I feel like a lot of, but Tommy, you're going to say something?
No, no, no. I was just writing something down.
Oh, you're gonna go build a custom visual now?
Yeah, I was like,
Oh,
side note, pay for thermometer
pay for
developers.
thermometer visual.
It's gonna be a gold mine. But yeah.
Ideas.powerbia.com. The thermometer visual. I really like.
No,
I really would like one.
I think a thermometer would really help my company. No. But you were saying,
But that's kind of where I mean, that's where I'm going with a lot of this is, you know, I feel like again as the data stewards here, as the people that are trying to work with the technical, so we're like bridging that gap. And I think there's what we're finding now is there's more and more need to bridge the gap between the super technical side of like DAX, modeling, equations, like all that, the data engineering part of that, and then going all the way forward to say, reports, visuals, actions. That's the other side. That's very business focused, right? And I loved your point, Seth. The business user is going to know way more about what's going on in their information. They know how they want to see their data stuck together. To me, the fun part of this, the why I enjoy this is it's this idea, this challenge that's presented, right? I need to answer these kind of questions. I need to shape the data in such a way, and then you have to go find through these disparate data sources, how does everything link together? What is the join that lets you stitch the data together to create the correct story? And I think that's a really interesting challenge and super fun for me. I really enjoy that part of it.
yeah, what Seth said, I know your answer because I've lived it, but I don't like the answer where it's not necessarily our domain because we don't necessarily know the business. I really want to challenge this because for one main reason. And Mike, you kind of said it too, where we are so focused. Or if you look at the budgeted time for business intelligence, we talk data flows, we talk data modeling, we talk DAX to actually get the numbers out there, get the correct numbers, get the numbers in a way that wasn't able to. We create something out of nothing so they
Yes.
can actually see it.
Yes.
But there's no budgeted time in our domain, or at least from what I've seen, that is to do the exploratory side where we know when we're building the report what's important. This campaign, this product, this sales team, and we're trying to, again, that's our job, but we don't have budgeted time to do the exploratory side on. I noticed for your sales team, they're not selling a lot of this, and that's happened over the last 6 months. Let me build something ad hoc for you to do that. Because people aren't necessarily asking us those questions. I want to make the challenge that I think the products and the technology is getting easier to use and more accessible to
Yes.
build these models. We should be the leader, like the data leaders, and we have everything available for us to be able to do this. I don't think we just have budgeted time to do this.
What would be the point of having that business area if you had the budgeted time to do that?
We're
You what like
Yeah.
you're saying your argument would be you just should absorb other areas of the business into the BI team?
No, I'm not saying that. I think anything.
It is, because what you're saying is if we had the time, the
Yeah,
reason there are other resources and employees within an organization is because you don't have the time to do all of that stuff. And you need people with expertise in that area of business
Yes.
to do the analysis, the exploration, and figure out how to make business decisions. Your reporting is there to help facilitate them and make their jobs easier and faster and better so that the organization makes more money.
but
Well,
Seth, how
and
many
Yes,
companies?
you
Yeah,
have the capability. There's a difference between having the capability, having the insight, and the tooling to allow you to create and build insights better, faster than anybody else in the organization. I'm not arguing that. 100%. That's why you're on the BI team, and you can spin through marketing, finance, all these different areas because you have that level of expertise, which also makes this area so engaging and fun, and also one of high value within an organization because there aren't people that can do that. They can't branch
right.
outside of their area like marketing or finance. They don't know how to engage with some of the technical platforms, etc. But there's a space for you, and that is to help facilitate using these tools much more so than in the past, so that these people don't have to stumble through the analysis or the data cleaning or all of the manual steps that they've built into a much cleaner, faster way to go glean insights. So I
No,
don't.
you're right, but one of my challenge is how many organizations have that maturity where they have analysts on every department?
But
Like,
you don't
but I
have
think
the time.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think you're right, Seth. Though I think this. How many teams are, whether you like it or not, there's already someone there doing it, and it's just probably in Excel. So, like to your point, there may not be a BI level person that's coming from like the corporate space that's amazing DAX modeler and data report builder, but and when I talk everywhere I've walked, every organization has this. There's this concept of like, what is the central data that we have to run our business on? And I think for sure the tooling is changing. Right, the price or the barrier to entry to get into doing very complex and large amounts of data is greatly reduced because you can get Power BI Desktop for free. You can start playing with this stuff immediately. And to me, that's the incredible value that I see with this tool is the tooling has gotten so good that we've been able to make accessible to many more people in the audience a very robust and game-changing tool of Power BI. I saw this very early on. I was like, oh my gosh, Power BI. Like I was doing Excel stuff like crazy, and I saw Power BI come out and thought, oh my gosh, this is SharePoint Power View moved to its own application. This is incredible. Like this is going to be huge. And so that's why I started the blog, back in 2016 because I saw the writing on the wall. I saw like as a business user, I got a tool that was so much more powerful than I've ever seen before at a cost that was the right cost. And now I can now I think that has then, because the technology is adjusting, it's now shifting the role of what BI teams and what IT teams need to be doing, right? So now I think I've said this before, is it's less around building reports for the business. Now it's more around providing models and access to data to the business and letting them
yeah,
kind of
I would
self-discover to a
say
degree.
I would say by default that is something that like maybe our motivation to build Power BI reports and everything has come back to is like, hey, you know what, it's not always worth it. It's not always the right solution, right?
Yes.
But to Tommy, to push back, I would
yeah,
say, okay, you have a BI team, right? Super small company, yeah, man. You're the analysts, you're the engaged in every business area. You're the one developing the reporting and doing the exploration all the way down to storytelling, because there's nobody else in this very small business that can do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're talking about centralizing around a BI team, I would say that given the tool that we have, like you can make much bigger impacts with that team by raising the bar of other people in those business units. And
Yeah.
I would much more rather spend my time like finding and helping support those people, right? So that's not to say like in the BI team you have your folks that are engaging with particular business units, so you're supporting them and they may do some exploration and storytelling, but the majority of their time is like who in here is doing the analysis, who in
Right.
here is already doing the heavy Excel work.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm going to show them how to do Power BI. I'm going to like work with them to provide reports that they can glean their own insights in, and then they can take it the step further, right? It's about helping find like get people to engage and make, like I said, make those decisions faster, right? Like I don't see the argument here of saying like, okay, I'm going to take all of the BI resources and then I'm going to just sink them into that business unit for 6 months as opposed to two, right? And then I'm going to move them around the company. Like
And
it's a
yeah,
time thing.
you're dead on. So allow me to say I do agree with parts of what you're saying, but I think I think my big point is if we're just focused on data modeling and DAX and Power Query and data flows and building the apps, you got to take intelligence out of our name because we're not doing intelligent.
I
And
don't agree with you. I
so
don't agree with you.
so
Just
here's the
you're doing intelligence even if you're just putting data tables together. If you're generating data tables or a star schema and giving that out, that's still business intelligence. I'm just not giving you the final report.
I
so
it's part of it from the standpoint that it's democratizing data within an organization.
yeah.
I I'm going to lean back on the insights word. There's a
Mhm.
difference between raw data dumps, right? That mean nothing, and saying, "Hey, here's the data. I'm shaping it in a way that's somewhat meaningful or very meaningful to you, but it's not the whole story. It's an insight. Like you have to take it a step further to tell, like, to figure out what it means to your business,
I like that.
because I don't know the
Yeah.
context of your business, right? I don't know the initiatives of your business unit. This report is designed to show you up, down, changes, whatever, so that when you have your business unit and you're saying, okay, we're going to make a major investment here this year in time or money, I better see results in this report. Those are insights I'm providing to you, right? They're
Yeah.
shaping their story. They know what their business is. That's why they're employed. Like it's not
S-
my job or my team's job to understand or explore all of that to be able to shape a story and tell and
No.
convince somebody of like good, bad, or ugly in my business area.
Well, let me ask why shouldn't we kind of act like the Genius Bar at an Apple store or the nerds at
You
Best
may
Buy?
be.
But
You
why?
may be because of like because you've spent time in that area, or the individual that's helping out the business area may be very knowledgeable in the area.
Sure.
But it's not their job on a daily basis to report those numbers, to figure out and explore and make it better, or you know do everything else that those individuals do from that particular area.
So I will ask the question again. If there are no analysts on a department and you don't have that maturity, but you have a business intelligence team, whose role is it to provide that type of insight to help
So
people make
so
decisions?
I don't think your question is even a real question. And here's why I'm going to say that.
Okay.
I don't think your question is a real question because if that team does not have any analyst on their team, they're already relying on another team. You're never going to have a business unit that's just going to run without any sort of analyst person inside it, or they're not relying on an external team to provide the analytics reports that they need to do their job. I think I would say your question's flawed from that perspective. So there's already somebody doing it, whether it's a central team, another team, or it's internal to their team already. So that would be my argument. There's going to be someone in there that is doing some sort of data analysis already.
Yeah, you may not have the analyst role
Yeah.
specifically,
Yes,
Sure. Okay.
but that doesn't matter. Like if you have 5 people in that department, two, three, somebody's analyzing data,
yeah,
right? If you're
Okay.
generating a report for them,
yeah,
somebody has a need for insights,
yes, correct.
right? Or to my earlier point, your company's so small, your BI team does everything, and yes, they have to do all of the work all the way through because
Correct.
that's the only people who would know how to look at data in any way, shape, or form, right?
Hmm.
Like
So yeah.
typically,
Okay.
we're
I'll rephrase this, and maybe this is an unflawed question then. should we have a better relationship with those people on the other teams?
100%.
A more intimate relationship, going through the data, what's available,
Yes.
Yeah.
helping them be able to
Yeah.
provide that
And I think
Yeah.
there's this
and
whole
make that more proactive.
Oh, totally. And
Sure.
I think this is
Yeah.
where Matthew
Well,
Roach's
why don't we
pyramid
do it?
comes
Yeah.
into play. I think this is where you start talking about, there's the center of excellence. I mean, even if it's a one person center of excellence for a company,
Yeah.
whatever that is, there needs to be someone that's communicating to executive level leadership. And again, this is one point that Matthew makes in his documentation of his observation. Your BI deployment will not work unless you have an executive sponsor.
hmm
That is a key element of what we're talking about here. So you need someone at the top who can talk to the other teams, who can get alignment as to what's going on. And we're talking about like the integration of all these different data sets and things across the entire part of the organization, right? There's a lot of really rich data. There's a lot of stuff that people are working on that are actionable. Every client I've worked with has had that person of, if so-and-so left, we would be in a world of hurt.
Right.
I mean, you talk to every organization, there's always that person who's been doing something, whether they're in IT or they're not, or they're doing some reporting on their own, or they've built their own process to do something. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard, if so-and-so left, if this thing changed, if they moved on, won the lottery, and got out of that company, they would struggle for a period of time until they could recover from whatever that analyst stuff they were doing. So those are the people that you want to engage with. You want to, talk to them, engage with them, try and figure out what they're doing, and try to produce that in a tool that either you're distributing the data better, you're documenting the data, and then you're reviewing with executive leadership. I mean, if you're in a team in a company where executive leadership is not valuing the effort spent around finding good data and supporting that good data of the organization, go to a different org. I mean, that's to me that's pivotal.
The way I look at this in a different way, to go back to my earlier analogy, Tommy, is like if a business unit or a person, right, has 10 doors of big decision making that they do, and when they open that door, they do exploration and they have to figure out a bunch of things, and then they like give the answer, close the door, go into that. If they have 10, I don't want to spend all my time or my researchers' time in one or two.
Yeah.
I don't want to do all the exploration for them. What I want to do is I want to help them get in and out as fast as possible in those 10 doors, right? And that's, to me, the difference between providing them tooling that allows them to get those insights faster so that they know their overall story and message.
Yep.
Yeah.
And i.e. action that comes out of that.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is much more valuable in terms of where my time is spent. And like, to draw it back to the other realm, it's like the only reason I'm opening up wide the data access doors is because I can't get to the business unit for another month. Right? Like, people need access to the data, but I'm going to come back around to them, and I'm going to help them in the future, like, make sense or streamline, those insights for them through additional Power BI reports.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's something we need to budget. Like, we've talked about the governance and adoption a ton, but we really haven't talked about this area. We've talked about the center of excellence, but not necessarily our relationship, the business intelligence relationship with those analysts, to help to empower them to be able to have the data that they need to be able to do that. So you'll see that on our topic board, but I think that's something worthwhile on how much time is needed for that and what resources are needed to do that effectively.
Totally agree with that. Well, I think we've burned through a perfectly good hour. We'll have to probably wrap it down here. I think my final thoughts here, gentlemen. I think my final thought here, again, I'm going to lean on this. If your report isn't making money or saving money, I don't think you need to be building it. I know that we're not quite talking about that, but I feel like that's, to me, this feels like a lot of like what we're talking about here, right? Make sure your report is adding value, and whether it's storytelling, a little tiny story, or a whole book of things. At the end of the day, even if you're building this story, the story of the data, if that sucker isn't making money or saving money, I'm not probably working on it, or let someone else work on it. Tommy, what's your final thought here?
No, I've really enjoyed how deep this conversation went, and I love though too. We're talking about the different relationships within the company. Honestly, like, I'm slightly persuaded with both what you said and what Seth said. With, yes, business intelligence has that ability, but there's no time for that. And if you have the people who are more intimate with the company's dealings with the operations, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, summary is really, is it our domain to do a story for every report or for every question that comes our way? Not necessarily. Is it something for us to be more conscious of? I'll challenge that, and I would say that's something we need to be more conscious and proactive on.
Seth, any
I
kind
would
of final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I would dovetail on what you said, right? Like, I think you make or save more money when people have the insights to drive those decisions.
Yeah.
And there is plenty of work to do in our realm to choose how to best help individuals in the organization come up to speed, raise the bar. But I, in general, would typically leave the storytelling to the end users.
I would agree with that one. I love it. Well, with that, everyone, thank you very much for listening to our ramblings on storytelling with Power BI and data things. We appreciate you all spending the time with us as we kind of chat through this topic. Our only ask, if you like this topic, if you found this was valuable, please just give us a, recommend to somebody else, someone at work, someone you're talking to. Hey, you're a Power BI person too. We recommend you check out this podcast, and we find that very much helps us. So we really appreciate the share and would really love to have someone else, just know about what we're doing. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Yeah, for all you storytellers out there, if you are listening to the podcast live or watching the podcast live, make sure to subscribe. Apple and Spotify. 35 episodes now available for you to listen to, all pretty relevant. If you are listening, make sure to join the conversation live. Very lively chat today. We got 25 people live on YouTube, a bunch on LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
So join the conversation.
Please
We
do.
love your insights and your own input as well.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you on Thursday.